Hello and welcome back to WD18, the Watford fan channel. It's been a while, admittedly. It's been the international break, and after the Oxford game, well, to be honest with you, due to various things getting in the way in life, we didn't manage to get around to doing a video. But I think it was also partly because, to be honest with you, we didn't really want to talk about it. It was a pretty dull day, but we'll briefly touch on that today. I'm joined by, first of all, Mr. Charlie Zazzera. Charlie, how are you?
Very well, very well. Apart from yesterday watching, well, it was more than two games which were both 0-0, including the Forest-Brighton game and extra time. That was an absolute stinker. I don't know if any of you guys saw that, but apart from the 0-0s, feeling good. Had a good week, good fun at the training ground, doing the Men's 12 World Cup draw. So thanks for everyone who watched that. And that's really ramping up now. So there's going to be different announcements coming along the lines. And if people haven't got their tickets, they'll be able to get their tickets soon. And that's going to be coming around the corner very, very quickly.
I believe it is 6 weeks away. I should have probably just mentioned just now in the intro that it did finish at Vicarage Road. Watford 0, Plymouth Argyle 0. The second time in a row, actually. I think we drew 0-0 with them at Vicarage Road last year as well. And we'll get into that as well in terms of why Watford potentially didn't win the game yesterday. But I'm also joined today by special guest Adam Drury. Adam, I think this makes it a hat-trick of appearances for you this season on the channel. Might be your fourth one, I'm not too sure. But how are you? How are you getting on?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm good, thank you. I've just been working on Inter v Udinese. So good to see, be aware of at least one Pozzo club still fighting at the top of European football. They played well as well. They lost 2-1, but gave it a good go.
Who scored for them?
Soleil, the centre-back.
I think that's how you pronounce it. Big teams, hasn't he?
Yeah. Kamara was playing and Okoye was in goal. And then, Cabaselli and Davis were on the bench as well. Nice. But they're decent.
The links are still alive. Yeah, Jacob Cultural, you'd have noticed it isn't on the stream today. I believe, Charlie, he's at Real Betis watching Cucho Hernandez, who moved there in January, actually. So, looking forward to welcoming Jacob back. Before we get into talking about the Plymouth game, Charlie, you touched on the Mental Health World Cup there. We are 6 weeks out now, I think. 7 weeks away. From it. It's going to be a really, really special day. And as you say, we've got some really, really exciting announcements coming up in the next few weeks. It's going to be a great day, so make sure to try and come down if you can. Adam, I'm not sure if you're joining up with the From the Rookery End team this year.
I'm actually not. It's actually my stag weekend, which it's good fun, but I'm gutted to be missing it, obviously.
Are you going?
Not quite sure yet. It's sort of, I think I know, but we're keeping the pretense of secrecy, so I won't say on the internet.
Nice. Well, if you are in Watford and you're looking for a good stag location or anywhere for a good night out, make sure to check out the Mad Squirrel, which is a 7-minute walk away from Vicarage Road. I imagine it would have been quite busy in there after particularly an early kickoff yesterday. Another early kickoff, but we'll be back in there hopefully for our next home game, which is in a couple of weeks' time. Let's get into it then. So the starting 11 yesterday, I cut a few changes to the side. I think the most notable one was Rocco Vata coming back in there. We also saw Caleb Wiley on loan from Chelsea make his full debut. And of course, the man himself, Quadro Bar, back on the bench. I'll go over to you, Charlie, first. Immediate thoughts on the team when you looked at it?
Ironically, I think I put a message in a group. When I saw the back four of Andrews, Pollock, Sierralta and Wiley, I was a bit concerned. But you can see there the performance, two centre-backs done really well. And we'll get on to Caleb Wiley, but I thought he was really, really good. And he was kind of my biggest positive from the game. And then, good to see Vata playing, good to see Chapford playing. I actually think kind of has gone under the radar. Sissoko in the last 6 or 7 games has been pretty good, and I thought he was pretty strong yesterday. I'm sure we'll get into Bayo, but I was pretty happy with it. But again, seeing Quadro Bar coming off the bench was good to see. But the impact that he made when he came on, I think I was surprised because he was just like he never went away. He was absolutely electric, bulldozing through left backs. He had a really good 5-minute spell and kind of completely changed the game for us. So it's good to see that we've got him going into the final end to the season, and hopefully he can have a really, really strong end to the season. Without doing too well, that's going to impress any potential suitors.
Yeah, let's hope so. We'll go into a bit more about Bar's performance in a bit. I was actually a bit surprised to see that some Watford fans were a bit disappointed that he wasn't starting. Adam, with this sort of injury, particularly with the way that Bar plays, why do you think Tom Cleverley opted for him to be on the bench? Because it's something you've got to manage, particularly with his stature and his physique as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I assume they're just being careful. And as Charlie said, Sissoko's actually had a decent spell. I think Bar off the bench is a good option anyway, even when he's fit, which we saw in the first half of the season, coming on against fullbacks who have already played 60 minutes and then giving him a tough time, which is what we saw yesterday. And the impact was pretty amazing because it's not just, he's obviously got this dribbling skill when he runs at the fullback and goes past them, which he did with basically his first action of the game. But as Charlie said, he rolls through them as well. Even when he doesn't get past them, he seems to find a way to knock them over. Still gets to the byline, gets the ball in, whether he's going round or through. So the strength, the pace, it was quite an impact. I actually thought one of the most disappointing elements of the second half was that we didn't keep feeding him as much as we did when he first came on. Because I was thinking there's no way we're not going to score the way he was playing when he first came on. But then it never quite got going in the same way. But yeah, I mean, playing like that, he's obviously going to have to start games soon. But if he's not fit to play 90 minutes, I'd rather he finished than he started.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this might be a big claim, but I definitely thought it in the first half of the season when he was playing before his injury. When he is fully at it, again, big statement, I think he is arguably top 3 most difficult attackers to stop in this league. That's not in terms of the best, in terms of output, because I still think that's part of his game that he can work on. But when he's at his absolute best, running with the power that he has, the strength that he has, it's very difficult to stop him without, committing a foul. And that's why he won a few penalties for us in the first half of the season. On the other side, Rocco Vata came back into the side. Charlie, fresh off the back of, firstly, presenting us with a signed shirt, which will be auctioned or raffled off for the WD18 Cup, but also making his Ireland debut. So a huge congratulations to Rocco for that. What did you make of Rocco's performance yesterday?
If I'm being brutally honest, I'd probably say a touch disappointing. I don't think that was necessarily down to him or him making drastically bad decisions. He started off on the left with George in the middle, and at half-time, Clev's changed that, and Vata was more central, and Georgie played out left, and I think that worked a bit better. I always kind of like George in that left half space as opposed to anywhere else. I think that's where he does his damage, drives forward, and he's been linking up with, it was Larousse kind of before this really, really well. But yeah, it just wasn't really Vata's game, and I just think we all need to remember that he is a real young player. I remember having quite a long, not heated debate, but conversations with you and Jacob about Vata and like Watford fans in the Oxford game, like really, really wanting him to come on and thinking it was guaranteed that if he came on, he would have changed the game for us. And yeah, I don't think he necessarily had a bad game, but I just think in the vital moments, it didn't really work. He had an unlucky shot in the second half, which could have easily been deflected in. His application's always spot on. I just think maybe his decision making can do with some decisions. But to be honest, especially that first half, it's not like he had much support or anyone who was at the level who could help him out. So yeah, not his best game, but yeah, it's not a slight on Rocco. I think I'm really excited to see what he can do for us next season.
Yeah, completely agree there. You touched on it there as well in terms of Watford fans away at Oxford. And I think that's a conversation that we'll have later on in the video in terms of Watford fans generally at the moment. Before we get into some stats, Adam, in terms of our shots in the first half or our lack of shots and our potentially a lack of creativity and cutting edge in that first half, what was your overall assessment of that first 45?
Yeah, it felt like positionally quite a few things changed. So Shaq Fatadze played as the 10, that's something I've been quite keen to see, but I didn't think it really worked. As Charlie just said, I think he looks way better when he gets in the half spaces a little bit wider and has the fullbacks to link up with. The angles didn't seem quite right in the first half, but whenever he got the ball, it was kind of all in front of him, quite straight. And I think he quite likes it when he can run at an angle and he's got the passes either side. So I think that switch made sense at half time. We saw quite a lot of the fullbacks coming central as well, and the wide attacking players playing wide, which I didn't think really worked. Didn't suit. I think Andrews in particular had a difficult half. Didn't really suit him coming inside and trying to get out of those spaces. He's always at his best when he's got space to run into wide rather than in congested areas. So yeah, just never quite worked. I also think Plymouth possibly surprised us in the way they played. I was expecting a game where they were going to sit back and we'd have loads and loads of the ball in their half, but actually they did press quite high, made things quite difficult in the way that Millwall did a couple of weeks ago. I wonder if they sort of stuck the video on of Millwall in that second half and thought we're going to try and copy that because, they made life awkward for us. Obviously, with Loser likes to drop deep and play from between the centre-backs, and they didn't really let us settle and play from there. So, yeah, it was all just a bit awkward. And as you say, I mean, there were hardly, as we know from the outbursts from around the three stands just before half-time, hardly any shots in the first half. So, yeah, it didn't really work. But, I mean, as much as anything, it's probably just intent because Cleverley said he gave them an absolute rocket at half-time and they came out much better.
Yeah, I agree with you on the fact that I think Plymouth slightly surprised Watford yesterday with the way that they came out and were really, really aggressive with their press. I thought particularly the way that in that first half and I think it was Hardy forced Selvik into a really, really good save. And that's the 5th clean sheet in 9 games for Selvik so far in the Watford shirt. And I think he's been a brilliant signing. But I think I think they'll be disappointed they weren't able to go at least 1 or 2 goals up by half time. Charlie, it was a difficult half in terms of shots. You've got some stats to run through with the lack of any sort of creativity in that first half. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say, but for some reason I can't share my screen at the moment, so I won't be able to show you visually. But you can see it on our Twitter. When watching the game, I don't know how you felt, Adam, but I never felt like we were in danger or Plymouth were properly knocking on the door or anything. You mentioned that Hardy chance, which was a good chance and a really good save by Selvik. But I did think we had the majority of the control, but just real lack of intensity and penetration and kind of intent. And yeah, it took to the 48th minute, the 3rd minute of injury time in the first half for Rocco Vata to have a speculative shot. So that is pretty poor. 1 shot against Plymouth, bottom of the team. But I think in context of the game, I don't think we were hanging on by a thread or anything like that. I just think sometimes with this squad and the players and the maybe experience and lack of leadership, sometimes we think we can just come into games and ease ourselves into it and coast to a 1-0 win. And in the Championship, that's never going to happen. I think you guys are right. I thought Plymouth's press was really good. I don't know if they kind of did that looking at our centre-backs in Pollock and Sirata, who may not be as good on the ball as someone like a Banqua. I think when Loser had that really good run of form, especially like the Sunderland and Middlesbrough game, I thought everyone was kind of really taken aback by how he was controlling the game. And I thought that was just going to continue, especially with the quality of opposition we were coming up with in March, which we'll go through later. But I don't know, in recent games, he hasn't been able to do it for prolonged periods and his touches have gone down. And I don't know why that is. I don't know if might have something to do with the way teams are pressing against us and people might have found us out a bit in recent weeks after Loser has been playing that kind of quarterback role. But I've been a bit, I don't know, Adam, if you've got anything to add to that, what you think of kind of Loser being able to dictate it the way Clevis want to play and the reason that hasn't been as successful as been kind of a month ago.
There was definitely a change at half-time in the Millwall game where I felt like Millwall completely... I think there were a few stats that did the rounds afterwards which kind of disproved this, but it felt at the game like they completely changed the way they played, stepped up, stopped him getting on the ball. And yeah, maybe since then he's not been quite as effective. Probably just a little bit of fatigue as well, like playing lots of games. Yeah, you're right. I think his form has slightly dropped off. It just felt like he wasn't quite there yesterday in terms of his sharpness. He is kind of being moved around a little bit as well. So he played more quarterback yesterday, but there was a game more recently, maybe Swansea or Millwall, where he did play a little bit further forward. So maybe that's something Cleverley will look at, kind of shifting the positions around a little bit. yeah, I mean, I still think he's obviously a key man in the way we try and play. But yeah, you're right. It's dropped off slightly.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think as well, teams are definitely, like Charlie just said, teams are potentially working us out a bit. And that's definitely something that Cleverly will need to look at. Adam, you mentioned Ryan Andrews before briefly. He was taken off at half-time for Jeremy and Ngakia. Do you think that was a fair sub? It was a difficult half for Ryan, wasn't it?
Yeah. It felt like, as I said, that the way it was used didn't quite suit him. We didn't really get him into the positions he wants to be in as often as he'd like. I think it feels like Ngakia has sort of emerged as probably the number one right back over the last few weeks. He's played really well since he came back from injury and found some consistency. And so maybe that kind of, that dynamic is almost there, where Andrews feels a little bit more like the backup. I think he's going to be fine. I see quite a few comments about if he hadn't come through the academy, he'd be in League One, League Two, whatever. Like, he's still a young player in his second full season, still developing. He's been involved in England youth squads like this season. He scores important goals, does certain things well. Definitely someone worth persevering with. And if we went into next season with Ngakia and Andrews again, probably wouldn't have too many complaints with that. But yeah, it's just a difficult period, which I think is going to happen for a young player. I mean, we probably still forget that 2 years ago, we'd basically never heard of him, didn't really consider him a first team player at all. And he's probably featured in 80-90% of matches since then, whether as a starter or a sub. So I think these things are going to happen. He's worth persevering with. But yes, still clearly a mile away from hopefully what the finished product will look like.
100%. I think it's definitely worth, persevering and just being patient with Ryan, because it has been a whirlwind 2 years or so for him. Obviously coming through the academy, making his debut under Chris Wilder, and with young players, it's not just with Watford, but unless at the absolute top elite level, you are going to expect potentially some inconsistencies while they almost find their feet in terms of best position to play and their best way of playing. So, yeah, I think patience is the word that we need to have with Ryan.
He's on a long contract now as well, isn't he? I think he signed a long deal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, hopefully, form picks up for him in the next few weeks. After that sub, though, the performance did pick up in the second half. We had the introduction of Quadro Bar coming back from injury again. Charlie, what do you think was the big difference in that second half? Cleverly definitely had a few words, didn't he?
Yeah, and I feel like we've said that on quite a few occasions this year. I'd love to see a full Clevs rocket in action to see what it's like. I think we moved the ball quicker. We were just going forward more and we weren't taking a safe option, and we were breaking lines a bit better and running at our men. The difference between the first half and second half were absolutely massive. And I feel like we've said it so many times this season, but it felt like it was going to be one of those Watford Vicarage Road games where we were keeping our powder dry in the first half and come out all guns blazing in the second half. Quadro Bar come on, have the decisive action, and we go on to win. And we never got across the line. But if I'm looking at the stats here for the second half, 74% possession. We had an XG of 1.91 compared to their 0.21 in the second half. 3 big chances, which we'll get onto. 16 shots compared to 1 shot. We should have easily converted one of those chances and we should have won. We're much the better team. And I just think the quality of certain players and aspects of the team, we weren't able to convert any of those chances when it really mattered, and we couldn't get over the line. But for me, when I looked at kind of that performance in the second half, it made me relief, because first half I was a bit like, oh, this is concerning. This has got Plymouth nicking one in the second half and getting an important point for them. But I just think just going up one gear, we showed that we were levels against. We just don't have the personnel to turn some of our really, really good play into results. And I think Clevs has said that for a while now. I think for the past month or 2 months, we've finally seen what Cleverly wants, playing with a back four, especially with play. I know Banquo didn't play yesterday, but we're looking a lot more stable. You mentioned the clean sheets recently. We're looking strong. It's just that we need to now start converting our chances to to get those good performances and like good structure that we brought in. But yeah, second half we were much the better team, and the performance deserved to win for sure.
Yeah, and that big chance did fall to Bayo. The ball was played across the box.
Which one?
God, yeah, not Vacuum Bayo's finest day, which unfortunately I think, particularly since when he scored those 4 goals against Sheffield Wednesday in November time, I think it was, maybe early December, just his form really hasn't kicked on at all. And I think the frustration is growing among Watford fans. I'm just going to share my screen quickly here, Adam, to show something that you tweeted yesterday after full time. Bayo had a bad second half and his Watford FC career is probably over. But honestly, it can't be optimal for a player to have started a game brightly and then feel the crowd on his back after every small mistake. It capitulated from there. Adam, do you want to explain a bit more in terms of what potentially happened yesterday during the game with Watford fans? Because it's not the first time this has happened this season, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I just felt he had actually started the game really well and was a positive in the first 20 minutes. I thought he looked lively, up for it, was linking the play. There were a couple of like sliding challenges and sort of duels with defenders, which he won. I remember him opening his body up and spreading the play. He looked quite engaged. And personally, it felt to me where I was sitting, and I know other people have said the same where they were, that it felt like people were very quick to get on his back and start moaning and complaining at the first sign of trouble, which is not giving him an excuse or a reason for the missed chances and the performances he puts in, because I think we all agree that we want a better centre forward for next season, and he's not had the season we hoped he would. Certainly, as you say, Sam, since he did actually seem to go up a gear a few months ago, it's kind of back where it was again. And we definitely need an improvement in that position. So there's no doubting that. And the chances he missed are important from yesterday. But I think on two levels, just on a kind of human level, I think some of the ridicule and the mocking I heard of him from around where I was, I don't really like. I feel like it's just not really a very nice thing to be doing, and I don't think it helps on the football side of things either, helps a performance from a player, particularly when I'd imagine he felt quite confident and good about the way he started. And you can imagine when you're playing and you start hearing bits and pieces from the crowd when a touch is slightly off or a pass is slightly off, it must play on your mind. And when chances come along like they do in the second half, you're not only thinking, I've got to take this chance, but what's it going to be like in this stadium if I miss it? So I just think it's counterproductive, and I'd like to think that we can maybe do better in supporting our players like that, particularly when I don't believe that attitude or effort is particularly an issue when it comes to him. But yeah, that's not excusing the level of performance which we wish was better. But he's who we've got. He's our senior striker, and he wasn't playing poorly enough for me to be on the end of chance. Like if Bayo scores were on the pitch yesterday, I just think it's a little bit too much.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a friend of the channel, Mike Parkin, has said quite a few times on From the Rookery, and I don't think with Bayo it is not an effort problem. Over the years, particularly over the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen so many players who are just happy to almost pick up a wage and stroll around the pitch for 90 minutes on a Saturday. With Bayo, I don't think it's like that at all. He's clearly a well-liked player in the dressing room as well. Firstly, I think he's very much a confidence player, and that's not what's going on with the crowds at the minute, and him isn't going to help his confidence one bit. But also it's just not helpful at all, Adam, as you say. Charlie, just looking at potentially the flip side of the argument, can you understand why this frustration is happening as well?
Yeah, I don't think it's exclusive to Watford fans, but I just think it's not necessarily football fan culture, but if you've got a striker who's missing chances and not flavour of the month, and do you know what I mean, you're not winning, you're going to be angry. You can see it on a much bigger scale when you look at Arsenal fan TV and stuff like that, and do you know what I mean, Manchester United and players like Anthony. And yeah, look, for me, he missed like 3 good chances yesterday. I can't remember. The first one was just after half time. Someone put a good ball across the box from the right, don't know if it was Bar, and he just totally missed it. That was on 47th minute. The big chance came. I think Rocco Vata did really well on the byline on the other side, kind of crossed it through the box, and it was so reminiscent of the maybe Jefferson chance. I don't know which one, but Norwich away, where it's literally a yard out. I've got it here. It was an extra.
Even that one though, like the cross does take a little nick just in front of him, doesn't it? And he suddenly has to dive a bit more forward to get there. Like
it's not like
it's not the sitter it looks like in real time, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do it for Jefferson, so I wasn't going to do it for Bayo, but you get the screen grabs of like his misses. They weren't good. And then the third one, when he kind of really good work from Rocco Vata, actually put a really nicely weighted through ball to him. And his confidence is just shot, and he rounded the keeper, and you never really had any confidence that he was going to just show some composure and slot it in. And I kind of put it down to similar to kind of Ryan Andrews, where Ryan, I just think he's low on confidence, can't really get his rhythm, like his place has been taken, just like Bayo with Doumbia. The only thing I might disagree with Adam a bit, and I don't know if it's kind of the narrative that's been formed, but sometimes I watch Bayo and his pressing or lack of pressing frustrates me. And when you watch kind of Doumbia, who might be a bit more raw and energetic and hurrying down and chasing down every opportunity, those two really stand out. But sometimes I watch him out of possession and I'm like, is he thinking about Udinese already, which you wouldn't understand. But I totally echo your sentiments that what benefit does it have to Watford winning a football match by booing our best striker? It's not beneficial at all. So another bad day for Bayo. Am I right in saying he's definitely going back to Udinese? There's not a world that he's going to be at Watford next season, is there?
I'm sure it's possible, in theory possible, but I feel like, I think that was announced because he'll be going.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised either way, to be honest with you, Charlie. If he's not back, I'll be like, yeah, fair enough. If he does come back, I'll be like, yeah, fair enough. But I do think that the problem again, and we've had this conversation so many times, and we'll have it in the summer again, I imagine, that the fact that we've been left with those two strikers, Bayo and Doumbia, for various reasons, not a slight necessarily on either of them. We've got a striker who is very confidence heavy, who hasn't necessarily got a proven record of consistency over the years at Watford, and an 18, 19-year-old striker who's currently injured is, cleverly. I just think it further reinforces the incredible job that Tom Cleverley's done this season. The January. I've seen a few comments about we should have brought someone in January, which makes sense. But it's hard to get the right player in January. This is actually a longer term problem in terms of us not having a centre forward who we can really hang our hat on. Unless you count João Pedro, probably since Deeney, like a centre forward who's scored goals for us consistently, who's led the line, who's been like our number 9. Not had one for years. Someone put a tweet out earlier with a long list of strikers we've signed over the years, and like it does make for grim reading. So I think January alone, it's not just about that. This is kind of quite a long-term failure to find good enough strikers. Yeah, 100%. And an area that has to be addressed in the summer. Another player I've seen is causing some conversation after his performance yesterday. I'll get this comment up here from Lewans. Tom Dele-Bashiru has to help loser out in possession and never looks to find space. Charlie, I really, really like Tom Dele-Bashiru, and I'm happy he signed that contract at the back end of last season. I do think there's been a slight dip in his performances recently. What is there anything you could put your finger on as to why that could be the case?
Before I get to that, I just wanted to highlight another kind of stat looking at Watford, and again, I can't share my screen, so apologies, but to further kind of reinforce what Sam said about the job Cleverley's done, for non-penalty goals that Watford have scored, we're actually the 4th worst for kind of underachieving our XG. So Luton, Hull, Swansea and Watford, we're minus 0.5, 0.6 in our XG. So we should have at least 5.5 more goals, which kind of shows we're creating those chances, but we're not converting them. And I think that just goes down to a personnel thing. I think we're 9th for XG in the table. So that's just one point I wanted to make. And on Tom Dele, I had some thought about this. And for me, I think the biggest problem for Tom Dele has been kind of the emergence of Loser. And I actually think they're quite a similar profile of player. but I just think Luz is probably a level above when it comes to being able to dictate play, dropping deep, moving the ball and kind of getting through. I just think that balances. They're both good players, but I don't necessarily think they've got that great cohesion, or they don't balance themselves out that well. Like I said, I think now what we've seen, I know it's maybe a small sample size, but when Luz's on it and he's controlling games and he's dropping deep, that really kind of disaligns our opposition and helps us kind of get up the pitch. So I think that's kind of what we're going to want to do going forward. And I just think Tom Delly, he's not really a destroyer in midfield. He's just going to win tackles and break play up and give it easy. He's not really... I think his biggest skill is kind of in tight spaces, but I just think at the moment we're not really seeing the best of Tom Delly. And I think that's mainly because of how we play and how we're utilising Loser. So that's my main thought. And Adam, I don't know what you think about Tom Delly recently. Do you think him and Loser can work well as a two?
Yeah, I mean, certainly a few weeks ago, I'd have said I really like them as a two. Again, in that Millwall game, something seemed to change where his confidence just fell off a cliff in the second half. They pressed him really high. I think he looks nervous playing out around the edge of the box. Not quite sure whether, if the ball comes into him and he tries to sweep it one side on first time, always feel a bit nervous with them. And we're not seeing those situations where he carries the ball through the middle of the pitch, which we know is his strength. For whatever reason, we're not getting him in those positions. So I still like him in there. I know statistically doesn't show up that well, but I think he gives you a sort of technical... If we're trying to control games by keeping the ball, having someone in there who's technically quite tight and at least can keep hold of it and doesn't look like the ball's a bomb at his feet is nice to have in there, which can't be said for all of our options in there this season. But yeah, he's hardly he's not having a major impact at the moment. But I still like him in there as Luz's partner.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully we can.
Dwymo on the bench.
Yeah.
I know he's getting back fit, so I agree with you. I don't think there's anyone at the moment that could displace him, but maybe Dwymo could. Who knows? And
I think Kayembe will be back in contention to play there as well. Now that Bata and Bar are playing in the more forward areas, wouldn't be that surprised.
Edo up front instead of Bayo again. Could see that. You never know. Look, to be honest with you, it's a difficult game, and it was a difficult game and a difficult game to talk about as well from a Watford perspective. But any other standouts? Anyone else? Either of you want to particularly shout out?
Messiah Edwards when he came on, did one.
Love it. Yeah.
We talked about Bayo going in the summer, but it wouldn't surprise me if obviously I think Dumbia is hopefully fit to at least play some part next week. And with Messiah Edwards having done well, you could kind of see the sidelining of Bayo happening sooner than the end of the season, potentially. So, he looked really bright. Nothing spectacular, but just looked very sort of willing, good runs. Looked decent.
Yeah. I want to shout out Caleb Wiley, who obviously made his full debut. Just like I know when Sam said he was going to be a great player before the game, I knew he was going to go on to good things. So, but I was surprised because I did think when he came on as a sub, he did look a bit shaky, a bit tentative. But I was just really impressed with all round of his game. I thought he was quite composed. He wasn't rash. His pace was good. I think him compared to Larousse when it comes to dynamism and mobility. I remember watching Larousse at Stoke away, and it was like on 65 minutes he couldn't move. I think Caleb Wiley has got a lot more mobility about him, getting up and down. There was a couple of hairy moments where Plymouth could have got in and his pace got us out of trouble. Looked a good threat, kind of overlapping, got a couple of good balls in. So it's not been, no one said it officially, but if there is a chance they can keep up this level of performance and we can keep them on for next year, I was really a really promising performance for me.
Yeah, promising from Wiley, and potentially see him at Vicarage Road next season as well. One to look out for in the summer, I suppose. Reflecting on March as a whole, then I'll just share Watford's March results. I want you both to sum up these 5 results in one word. So we've got Stoke City 0, Watford 0, Watford 1, Millwall 2, Watford 1, Swansea 0, Oxford 1, Watford 0, and Watford 0, Plymouth 0.
I think that's quite underwhelming, considering how I felt really confident going into those run of games after Luton, wasn't it? Particularly considering the one game we've won there, I feel like it's the worst we've played out of all 5 games. That Swansea game was an absolutely shocking game, just in general, not just Watford's performance. But I felt confident we were going to pick up maybe 3 wins from across those games, and if we had done, we'd now be in the top 6, which shows just how close it is up there. Having said that, I also believe we are playing kind of the most sustainable. The way we're playing at the moment is the most sustainable, and the way we want to be playing moving forward more than any other stage of the season. Like controlling the game, lots of possession, getting the ball into the final third. I think we're kind of doing the right things, and in each of those games, you could highlight moments where we were doing the right things. It's just the results return really has been disappointing. And I think if you had Bar fit for that run, we'd maybe have 3-4 more points out of those games, because he's kind of the point of difference if we're dominating. So yeah, a little bit disappointing, but not totally discouraged by the way we're playing.
Yeah, Charlie, I mean, I think it's frustrating for me because 5 more points, and we looked at those 2 games, Oxford away and Plymouth at home. We win those 2 games and we would be in the playoffs at the moment in the top 6. Your one-word review from those 5 games?
Yeah, meh. Is meh a word?
We'll take that.
Yeah. I'm not frustrated because like I'm totally fine with where we're at and the way we're playing, and the fact that now I think we can go into the rest of the season with, like you said, especially when we saw the performance of Messiah Edwards coming on, who looked really, really bright. It'd be great to see some of the younger players. I know they've got a big game in the FA Youth Cup against Man City coming up, but I'm really kind of content with where we are, and maybe that's a bit of lack of ambition. But and when we're talking about loser kind of going off the boil, half of me was thinking might not be a bit of a blessing in disguise, him kind of having a quiet end to the season before the January transfer windows, and if we can get him back firing ahead of next season, he could be a really key part. But yeah, I just think we're definitely nowhere near playoff contenders for me. I know it's a weak season. I think it could be an even weaker season next season with Ipswich, Leicester and Southampton coming down. And if we do improve and add real quality in some positions, then I'd be a bit more confident going into the playoffs. I don't want to scrape into the playoff and get kind of battered. I know I've probably said that on this before, but I'm quite happy with how everything's gone this season. For the squad that we've got and the challenges that we face, we've had big injuries with Bar, who's coming back. So yeah, I'm fine with the position we're in. It's just going to be interesting. We're playing Bristol City, who I think didn't win yesterday. I think they had a disappointing result.
They lost to Burnley. Yeah.
Again, I know Clevs will be wanting to go into that thinking we win that, we're back into playoffs contention. I think they're pretty good at home. I don't know if I've just made that up, but it's one of those. If we do win at Bristol City, that will change the thinking narrative again to playoffs, could we? But yeah, I think a really bad March when we look at those fixtures. And then I did look at the I felt this season we were always better against better teams, and we always raise our levels, and we have got a better points per game against the top half teams currently in the top half against bottom half. So when you look at Plymouth, and we can't remember, they are rock bottom of the league. It's not great, but hopefully all this stuff will even itself out, and next season we'll go into it as a bit more of a proper team who can have a proper playoff push.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one thing that I do think is a big positive, and I know it's only 1 point on the board yesterday, but one thing that Tom Cleverley mentioned at the back end of last season or in pre-season was that the minimum he wanted to at least beat last season's points tally, and Watford just need 4 more points from the remaining 7 or 8 games to beat it. 3 points to match last season's tally, which, having lost some big players in the summer, Wesley, who, Yasser Asprilla, Ishmael Kode and a couple of others as well, I think that's definitely impressive and a positive to take. I also would say that I agree with you, Adam, that I think in terms of consistency of performances, while the results aren't necessarily there, it is nice to see us having sort of a set style of play and trying to do things, because even if results aren't coming off now, keep hold of a couple of the more sellable assets coming to next season. I think we can almost have those building blocks in there. It's going to be easier to see what needs addressing in the summer. Obviously, we know a striker. I think a central midfielder we're going to need as well. And a centre-half if James Banquer doesn't stay. So, yeah, I do think it is definitely going to be beneficial to us in the long term. Bristol City then, we just mentioned that, but any changes you'd make to the team, Adam, going into it?
Who starts up front, Adam?
I would start. Well, if Doumbia is fit to start, I would start him. If not, probably Bayo, I think, for me. Because I don't think Massara Edwards is gonna be chucked into the starting 11. I guess Kayembe comes back into contention for that position. I think when Vata, I don't really like Vata there. I think he's played there a little bit, and I don't think it really works. So yeah, just with the lack of options, I think probably Bayo, and then I'd bring Bar in from the start if he's fit to play 90 minutes. But if it's any less than that, I'd rather have him on at the end than the start. So I don't mind him being a sub at all. I think Kayembe will probably come into the team because he tends to start when he's fit, and he's obviously a favourite of Cleverley's. So.
Yeah, I think we missed Kayembe a bit yesterday, and I just
his shooting.
Pardon?
His shooting. He came on and he's firing shots off.
I just think one where Vata might be a weakness is kind of ball retention and keeping hold of it. I think that's one thing that Kayembe does really well, and I think that we struggled to keep it kind of in the final third yesterday. And I know you mentioned about Kayembe could play in the 2 against Loser. I don't like the sound of that, to be honest. I'd still rather have Tom Daly and Loser, but I think Kayembe is the 10 and maybe Georgia on the left and Vata on the other side with Bar, one of them coming off the bench. But yeah, I don't know about starting Bayo. I just think his confidence is literally on the floor. We're going to be up against tougher proposition. It's just like, who else? Do we literally throw in a youngster? I don't think Doumbia is going to be fit. Sam, would you go for Kayembe R9, false 9 again?
God.
Oh, false 39?
K9.
The false 39. Brilliant. I think it's going to have to be Bayo, isn't it? I
think there's a chance he'll pick Kayembe. I actually do think there's a decent chance of that.
Yeah.
I think Bayo, as you say, confidence is on the floor.
Assuming that Bar will be on the bench again, just because you are going to have to manage him with his explosive traits, might not necessarily be the worst thing in the world. Almost going for a more conservative approach. Then in about 60 minutes, you unleash Bar, and particularly on the counter attack, that could be deadly. They've had a really good season, Bristol City, under Liam Manning, and even if they don't get playoffs this time around, I think, again, the building blocks are there for them to go on and succeed next season. Before I get both your score predictions then for Bristol City, we did say at the start of the season that we would donate £1 for every goal that Watford score to Hertfordshire Mind, but we did only score 2 goals throughout the whole of March. So I think we've done it a couple of times this season, but instead I think we're going to donate for the number of points that Watford got, which I believe was 5, Charlie? 5 or 6, I think we got.
I think so. My maths might be wrong. Did we get more? Yeah, we'll do it 1 for each point. I was going to say clean sheets, but I think a fiver each, 1 for each point. But we'll thank the defenders other than the strikers for, Hertfordshire Mind can thank the defenders rather than strikers for March.
Yeah, they've definitely had a much better March than the attacking part of the pitch for Watford. Right, and let's wrap up. Adam, score prediction for Watford against Bristol City at Ashton Gate.
1-1. And we'll still be talking in a week's time about, is the playoff still just about on? He's still 4 or 5 points away. I think this will keep going until maybe that Easter weekend where there's 2 matches, and that will finally kill it.
Yeah, it's incredible the way that the Championship works. And you're right, it is a really, really poor league. I'm not sure if I agree, Charlie, necessarily in terms of it being an even worse league next year, because that's going to, I think, be difficult, to be honest with you. And also, I think next year, we could actually be in a position where 2 of the 3 teams who come up from League One end up challenging for top 6 as well, because Birmingham and Wrexham, well, if Wrexham hold on and come up, they're both going to be chucking money at it as well. So will not shock me if we see those 2 teams up there next year. And yes, Southampton might lose the likes of Dibbling. Ipswich will probably lose Liam Delap, and Leicester will probably keep most of their assets, to be honest, if they go down. But you'd imagine that those 3 teams will be up there as well. So yeah, that's looking ahead to next season. But as long as we can get the building blocks in there, should hopefully build on it for next year. Charlie, how are you feeling going into it, and your score prediction, please?
3-3. It's coming in. It's coming in. Once this season, it's coming in.
I'm more interested in what you say next after Watford do one day draw 3-3. Interesting in where we go from there. I'm going to go with... One thing I'm noticing with Watford at the minute is that we are conceding a lot of very cheap free kicks in and around the area, and I worry about that with Scott Twine in there at the moment as well. I think we're going to lose 2-1, and I'm going to say Scott Twine free kick will score. We'll score for them as well. A bit of a niche prediction that, but
worth a bet. Scott Twine loves it against us, doesn't he?
He scored against us there last year. Yeah. Ben Hamer died.
God. Yeah. Do you fancy recreating that for us, Adam?
That's all right.
Love it. Adam, thank you so much for joining us today. As always, it was a pleasure. And Charlie, excellent analysis as always, my friend. Thank you everyone for watching today. Make sure to like and subscribe to WD18. Make sure to donate to Hertfordshire Mind and check out the Mad Squirrel on a match day. And we'll be back after the Bristol City game for a review of hopefully Watford returning back to winning ways. Thanks for watching, and up the Hornets. You want.